Thank you, everybody. Interesting to hear about cost, actually, before I even get into the slides, because it's just fascinating to hear a couple of words talking about the cost of going to public cloud, and also the cost in terms of time it takes to get projects going inside your own data center today. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus on private cloud, because I think there's a huge cost-saving benefit that can be achieved inside people's own data centers today by moving towards a private cloud model, and ultimately moving towards hybrid cloud with integration with public cloud. And that's really what the slide deck's about. I've only got 15 minutes. I appreciate that I'm basically between you and coffee, so I'm going to sort of get through it quite quickly. I do have a breakout session at about 11 o'clock, which I'll be going into much more detail on this, so you can come along there if you want to get more information. So what are we seeing from Dell's perspective when we go out and talk to customers? And I talk to customers an awful lot, and I go out and talk to customers, and the thing that they say to me almost exclusively is, the problem I've got is my end users expect a lot more today. You know, they're coming in with their own devices, with devices that I'm not sure how to secure inside my environment. They're after applications, and they want that quickly. 6 months is no longer acceptable. I want it in a week, and how do I do that? My budget is not growing. If anything, it's shrinking. So I'm being asked to achieve this with probably less money. And at the same time, the business leaders, the people who actually, whether it be private or public sector, but in terms of the company, I'm being asked to drive policy forward to help us achieve more, to help us sort of gain more pupils or to achieve more in the private space. So how do I do that? How do I do all of this with a smaller budget? And how do I do that with my existing infrastructure? And that's the biggest question, the biggest single question I get asked all the time. The simple answer to that is to try and help move towards a more automated data center. And that really means adopting private cloud infrastructure. The problem that most people have is, as per the introduction, most people already have a data center. Typically, it's quite heterogeneous. It's a brownfield site. There's a mixture of different vendors in there in terms of networking, in terms of storage, in terms of servers. I've got a whole bunch of different management interfaces. I may have a level of virtualization there, which means I've got a hypervisor or maybe multiple hypervisors, which I'm also managing through, again, more management consoles. And all of a sudden, I've got a very complex environment, which is very difficult to manage. Now, someone comes to me with a new project and says, I need to spin this up. In order to do that, I might have to procure servers, I might have to integrate them into my data center, I might have to deploy hypervisors onto them, bring them on board, and deploy VMs. The whole process is very, very, very long. Wouldn't it be great if I could run my data center as if it were a public cloud, my own personal cloud? So I can just spin up a workload and deliver it to that user in a matter of hours, not months. Wouldn't that be fantastic? And a lot of people say, yeah, it's nirvana, it's never going to happen. The reality is that we can do it today, and we can do it over a heterogeneous environment. And that's really Dell's message today. We're not asking you to rip everything out and start again. What we're trying to do is help you save cost by taking what you've already got and make it much more easy to manage, much more easy to use. That's really our story as we go forward. There's a couple of things we can do that. Let's start with hardware first. I'm going to talk quite a bit about hardware. Sorry, I'm from Dell. I'm going to do that. But one thing that people say to me is, I've talked about the hybrid cloud model to a point, but also it's like another big thing as well is how do I get there? How do I get there simply? And we developed a product called vStart. Now, vStart is a product that basically, and you'll see one, we have one in the expo. We have a vStart 50 sat there. Essentially what it is a pre-configured, pre-racked virtualization entity. So you can come to Dell and you can say, I need to have a virtual environment of, I don't know, maybe 100, 200 virtual machines inside my data center. I don't have the experience, I don't have the time, and I don't have the breadth of knowledge inside my own team today to build that up and to spec it up. And I certainly don't have the time to work with you in terms of speccing it up, getting the right storage, getting the right networking, bringing it on board, once I've procured it, putting it into a rack, cabling it all up, deploying the virtual environment to it, making sure I could set it all properly so I can manage it all effectively, and turning it on and deploying VMs to it. What I want you, Dell, to go and do this for me. So look, I need, 100 VMs, an average 100 VMs, 200 VMs, deliver me something to do that. That's what vStart is. Yeah, so you can say, well, we can deliver this to you, and it's going to come pre-cabled, pre-configured to your specifications. So either with trial licenses or with licenses you can purchase from Dell, or we can activate your site license for your virtualization, both on VMware and Hyper-V, different flavors of this. You've got the servers in there, you've got the storage in there, you've got the network in there. It's all pre-configured and ready to go. It's pre-cabled. Essentially what we do is we come and actually, it comes in a big crate. We wheel it out, we plug it into your data center, we turn it on, and you can immediately start deploying VMs to that data center. So straight away, you've got a virtual environment inside your data center. And you can have that in a very, very short space of time, and it's ready to go. The big differentiator from Dell, because you'll hear stories like this from our competitors. You know, every time I go and do presentations where we have competitors talking, they'll talk about things like this. The interesting thing about this, when they talk about it, they say, it's great, you can manage your hypervisor, and then you can manage all the hardware using these other consoles. You know, here's our storage console, here's this console, here's that console. With the Dell solution, what we do is we put all that manageability and we integrate it into the hypervisor. So for example, if you were to buy the VMware version of this, you can manage all that hardware infrastructure right from the vCenter. If you bought the Microsoft version of this, you can manage all that hardware infrastructure right from the System Center. So we're not giving you more consoles, we're not adding more complexity. We're saying, here's a console you're going to be using because you have a virtual environment, and guess what? Now you can manage all your hardware in there, your servers, your networking, your storage, and not only that, you can do bare metal deployment from inside that as well. So it gives you a really easy way of doing it. So anybody can do that. There's no more training involved, no more special skills required to do that. If you can manage your virtual environment, you can manage a vStar. So these are the flavors that are available today. Like I said, there's a Microsoft version and a VMware version. Essentially, we have a vStar 50. We have a vStar 50, which you'll see outside, which has a switch at the top, has a Power Edge servers in there, some Ecologic, which is iSCSI storage, and a UPS. The 100, slightly bigger. Now, initially when we launched these, the number kind of was an average rough guess of number of VMs. It's not accurate. We don't like to think about that. It's just an idea of sizing, just to give you an idea of sizing. We're not saying it will definitely run that number of VMs. So vStar 100, again, I've got more switches, I've got more servers, I've got 3 servers, and I've got a management server in there as well, so 4 servers in total. Again, I've got an iSCSI Ecologic storage array. And the vStar 200, I've actually got 2 iSCSI Ecologic storage arrays. I've got 6 servers, a management server, and I've got 4 switches. We're going to be expanding this portfolio out. You're going to see bigger ones coming through as well. We're going to be introducing blade-based versions of this as we go through, and you'll see some announcements on that later on this year. So, as I said, the big differentiator in here is you can plug this in, turn it on, and you have a virtual environment inside your data center and manage it right from within these tools, so Virtual Center or System Center. We're also going to be launching, and I'll be talking about it a little bit more in the breakout session, a cloud version of vStar. So essentially what we're doing is offering what we're terming internally as a cloud start. So essentially it's a vStar product which will have a private cloud delivery application on top of it, which is called VIS Self-Service Creator, which I'll talk about a little bit now, essentially, which is a workload delivery tool, an automation tool, on top of the vStar virtualization environment, which basically is going to be private cloud in a box, if you like. So a very simple and easy way of moving to private cloud. To see that coming through. So VIS Creator gives you, essentially it's a self-service portal. Users can come along and they can go to that portal, understands who they are, and it delivers them a list of workloads or applications from their catalog, depending on who they are. It's policy-based. It also gives you sprawl control as well, which is a really nice feature, because essentially what it does is it gives that workload to the user on a lease basis. So if a user comes along and says, I have a project, I need a server, I want a Linux server, or I want a Windows server, I need these applications on there, I need it for this period of time. It goes to the self-service portal, that can be automated, it'll actually deliver that to them, it will deploy that and deliver it to them in a fully automated fashion. But it's done that on a lease basis. So it understands that when you apply for it, you actually say how long I want it. I want it for 6 months, I want it for a year, 3 years. It understands how long that is. It also understands the usage of that application or that workload. So over a period of time, it will start to say, well, hold on a second, this individual's not using this anymore. Essentially, this virtual machine isn't being used. So, and I can set governance in 2 different ways. I can be quite firm or I can be quite soft. If I were firm, I would just recall that back. Bring that back in, and essentially what I've done is I've freed up that space on the server. I've eliminated that virtual machine sprawl. Or I could be quite soft, so I could send them an email and say, why aren't you using it? Can I have it back, please? So you've got two choices on there as well. But it gives you that sprawl control. Also gives you show back for costing, so you can charge out to different departments, and fully detailed reporting tool and auditing mechanism for all this as well. So a really nice solution. We'll be talking about it in a lot more detail at the breakout session as well. That sits on top of vStar. I'm going to talk a little bit about the integration points mentioned as well. I'm going to talk quickly about integration with System Center, integration with vCenter. So how have we been able to achieve this? Well, essentially, the most important way that we've been able to do that is through the fact that all Dell servers today have what's called a lifecycle controller. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have powered servers inside your data centers today, 11th generation, or even the new 12th generation servers, the Intel E5-based products. But the big differentiator is that we don't use agents to manage those servers anymore. We've gone way beyond that now. So essentially, all our servers are managed using hardware on board on that server. So it's completely agentless. So I can out of band, I can manage what's going on in my server. I can see what's happening at any given time. I can manage the operating system on there as well. I can do that out of band. I can do firmware updates and so on. I can do a very cool feature as well is that if I have a part failure inside my server, let's say, for example, an HPA fails inside my server and I replace it, the lifecycle controller has already taken all the information that it requires for that particular part. When I replace it and plug it back in, it'll flash that part with all the original parts details, including the worldwide name, for example. So it makes it very, very easy for me to swap parts and manage that as well. It's a very, very advanced management tool. That allows us to have the plugins into System Center Configuration Manager. So we've tied those two in, working with Microsoft System Center. So it allows you to deploy servers bare metal and deliver appropriate updates. And you can do that out of band using the lifecycle controller. Beyond that, we have Dell management packs for System Center Operations Manager, which allow you to monitor your hardware alongside your applications and your operating systems inside your System Center environment. And we also have our Pro management packs, which integrate into SCVMM, which allow you to manage all your virtual machines and your virtual hardware side by side and seamlessly inside that environment. So it's seamless integration at every single level inside System Center. Beyond that, we have a product which also sits inside the VIS portfolio called AIM. AIM is a really exciting tool, and I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about that in a second, but we now have integration of AIM into System Center Orchestrator 2012. So we have integration points at every single step across the the System Center portfolio. The other product we have, looking at the VMware side of things, is the management plugin for VMware vCenter. Now, I know probably most of you are familiar with vCenter. You probably already got that inside your data center. You're familiar with using it, and you're familiar with these screens here. What we've done with the plugin is you've got a plugin that allows you to manage all that server hardware and all that storage hardware right from inside vCenter. So what I can do is I can go in, I can see a tab, it says Dell, I can hit that tab, and I can manage all my servers inside that environment. I can even do bare metal deployment of a virtual machine from within inside here onto Dell hardware without having to do anything on the server. Essentially, I can just plug it into my network, I can go around and I can do bare metal hypervisor deployment right from the vCenter onto that Dell hardware using this plug-in tool. So again, what we've done is we've limited the amount of consoles you need to manage our hardware, allowing you to manage hardware inside tools that you already have. Okay, I'm going to talk very quickly about our next generation 12th generation servers. Some of the features that we have in the servers are very, very advanced and help you kind of accelerate towards the cloud. Some of the cool things on here, for example, we now have switch-independent partitioning. So regardless of the switch infrastructure that you have inside your environment, you're able to partition that traffic on your 10 gigabit Ethernet. And by the way, you can choose which vendor you want for your NICs. You can have QLogic, you can have Intel, you can have Broadcom. And they're on a daughter card, so you can just chop and change them around if you want to, but you can choose that when you configure it up. We have something called Express Flash PCI SSD drives. You've probably heard a lot about that. I know we have Fusion IO here, for example, who have a solution like that. Essentially, what we've done is we've delivered PCIe SSDs, which there's a couple of them on our servers, at the front of the server. They're plugged directly into the back into a third generation PCIe, so it allows you to have database acceleration on very inexpensive, comparatively, SSDs on the front of the server, which you can chop and change without having to open the server to do that. Agent-free management I've talked about. Very high storage capacity. The R720XD can fit 26 hard drives today. Very large memory density, up to 768 gig on a 2U or 1U server. Integrated GPUs. On our T620, for example, you can put 4 GPUs. On this 2U 720, you can put 2 full-size GPUs inside there as well. And also, a really important thing, we've adopted a new power management model for all our new servers, which allows you to control the power not only at the server level, but also at the rack, the row, and also in the full room level. And the nice thing about that, guess what? We integrate that into the management tools I've already mentioned before, for example, System Center. Okay. Oh, and we're shipping this now. We've been shipping this since E5 launched. So there's no delays on us. You can order this right now. Last thing I want to talk about is AIM. I mentioned this very briefly just earlier on. We're talking about integration with System Center. What is AIM? What's it about? Now, I'm going to go into this in a lot more detail in the breakout, which you're welcome to come along and see. Essentially, what AIM does, AIM is a workload mobility tool, workload enablement tool inside your data center. So let's think about a heterogeneous environment inside my data center. I've got a mixture of servers from different vendors, HP, IBM, Dell inside there. I've got a network, which might be a mixture. Typically, it's not. Typically, it might be a Cisco network. I've got storage from different vendors. I might have an iSCSI SAN. I might have fiber channel SAN. And how do I manage workloads inside that environment? I might have different hypervisors in there as well. Typically, I do, maybe 3 hypervisors inside that environment. And this goes back to the point about cost. It goes back to the inflexibility of my data center. It's inflexible, it's difficult, it takes me a long time to spin up those workloads for my users. Now, wouldn't it be great if I could take that environment without changing any hardware, even if none of it's Dell, without changing any of that hardware, and I can overlay a product called AIM. And what AIM does is it gives me complete workload mobility. Essentially what it does is it de-shackles the server from the data center. Yeah, so what will happen is it will take a look at the servers, and it will take all the workloads on there and move those workloads to the SAN. That's the operating system and all the applications that are on there. It also takes basic information about where that workload exists inside my data center. And what I mean by that, it understands what SAN it has to be connected to, how it's connected to the network, what the VLAN ports are, understands what the MAC addresses are on that server, what the worldwide names are for the HBAs. It takes all that information, ties it all up in something that we call a persona. Basically, it's a workload, a portable workload. I move that to my shared storage. I can then power down all my servers. I can then move my workloads anywhere inside my environment, and I can tier that, and I can pool it. So I can say, I've got a bunch of 2-socket Intel over here, I've got 4-socket Intel, I've got 2-socket AMD, 4-socket AMD, I've got Hyper-V, I've got VMware, and I can create these pools of places I can put workloads. And I can then tell each workload that I've got, I want you to work in this pool. If you can't find anything in that pool, go and work in this pool instead. So for example, I could say I've got a workload, it's a standard Unix server I need to go running. And normally I run that as a VM in my Hyper-V environment. Okay, it goes up there, there's nothing available. It'll go and run in my VMware environment instead. Now, I haven't got to convert that workload. I haven't got to migrate it. It'll just work inside that environment seamlessly. And that opens up a whole host of new doors. Say, for example, I've got a physical server inside my environment and it fails. Well, because it's AIM managed, because that's got a portable workload on it, it'll just move the workload somewhere else. So suddenly I've introduced failover in a non-virtualized environment. And if you spin that up a bit further, if I'm replicating storage between two data centers and they're both AIM managed, I can move workloads from one to the other. So I've suddenly got a DR situation with this tool. And the really great thing about that, I can have dissimilar data centers. I could move physical workloads on, which are non-virtualized from one data center onto VMs on another data center in case of failure. So huge flexibility, and you can see straight away how by putting a tool like this in place, you suddenly have a lot more speed and flexibility inside your data center, the ability to be able to deliver that workload out to your users at a lower cost in a lower amount of time. That's what AIM's about. Now, we're going to go into loads more detail on this in the breakout, so if you are interested in this, please do come and see us, or come and see us at the booth that we have at the stand outside. This is a very marketing slide. I am in marketing, so I'll put it up there anyway, but I'm not going to bore you with that because we are very close to coffee. We'll read the key points we're going to talk about. In terms of what we're able to do, the way that we help you integrate into private cloud is integration with all the virtualization hypervisors you have today, simplified management, enhanced cloud capability, our new servers, heterogeneous support, and the ability to power up using something as simple as a vStar. And that's it. Thank you very much.